Okay, let's get started on section 6 in chapter 5 here. This is all about applied problems, just kind of word problems, application problems that involve fractions. Okay, so the first example, it says find the perimeter of the square. Okay, so when you're finding the perimeter of something, you're finding the total distance around the shape. Okay, has nothing to do with area. Area is length times width. Perimeter is when you add up all the sides. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. Now, these are all, this is obviously a square. So these are all the same thing. These are 2 and 9/10, right? So we could add 2 and 9/10 plus 2 and 9/10 plus 2 and 9/10 plus 2, 4 times. Or we could just do 4 times 2 and 9/10, which I think would be easier. So we can just do 2 and 9/10 times 4. All right, and we're going to apply what we've learned, which is change it into improper fraction, right? So 29/10 times 4 over 1 right here. And then we can do a little bit of cross canceling. A little bit of cross canceling right here. These numbers can be divided by 2. So that turns into a 2. This turns into a 5. And then 29 times 2 is 58. That's 58. 5 times 1 is 5. All right, so 58/5. We change it into back into a mixed number. We get 11 and 3/5, because 5 times 11 is 55, plus 3 is 58, and we get 11 and 3/5 yards. All right, cooking. Leroy is using a recipe that calls for 1/4 of a cup of milk per batch. If he has 5 3/4 cups of milk, how many batches can, it says she. Leroy does not sound like a girl's name, but whatever. Okay, we got, so we're looking for how many batches we can make. So this is, we're looking for how many fourths of a cup. So we could just take 5 3/4 and subtract repeatedly. Now, but it's much easier just to divide, right? We could just divide. So we can do 5 3/4 divided by 1/4, because we want to know how many 1/4 go into that, the total cups of milk that are available. All right, so we're going to change this into improper. So we get 23/4. We're going to change division into multiplication and flip the first or the second fraction. All right, this is very convenient. These 4's cross cancel. They turn into 1, and that's it. You got 23 exactly. So this is going to be 23. We can make 23 batches of whatever. Doesn't really say what they're making, but 23 batches. All right, snacks. Robert and Paul each took some chips from a bag of potato chips, which contained 9.5 ounces of chips. Robert took 2 1/3 ounces of chips, and Paul took 3 5/6 ounces of chips. How many ounces of chips were left in the bag? Okay, so this is subtraction, isn't it? So we can kind of approach this in a different way. So we can do 9.5 minus, and let's do Robert has 2 1/3, and then add Paul's amount, which is 3 5/6. So that is what I'm going to do. And I put that in parentheses because we can add that up and then take that all away from 9.5. All right, so let's do that. So let's go ahead and change everything into improper though. So this turns into 19/2 minus 7/3 plus, and then this is going to be 23/6. All right, so I'm going to focus on just this part. So the LCD of that part is 6, right? So we got 6 there. And so 3 times 2 is 6. So 7 times 2 is 14. So that turns into 14/6. 6 times 1 is itself, and 23 times 1 is still 23. So now we have 14 plus 23, which makes 37, right? So you got 37/6 right there. And then we're going to do 19 halves. I'm going to drop down the 19 halves part minus 37/6. So let's find a common denominator again, which I should have just done common denominator for all of them, but I wanted to see what that came out to, which is 6, and then we're going to multiply this one by 3. All right, and that comes out to what, 57? All right, and this gets multiplied by 1. So that turns into 30. Well, it doesn't turn into anything. It stays 37. And so you got 57 minus 37, which is 20. So you got 20 over 6, which reduces to 10 over 3, which if you turn it back into a mixed number, you get 3 1/3. And this is ounces. OZ, abbreviation for ounces. All right, garden area. What is the area in square yards of a rectangular garden that is 11.5 yards by 12 1/6 yards? All right, so you don't have to draw a rectangle, but I'm going to do that. All right, so we got 12 1/6 yards here. This is 11. This is definitely not to scale. But when you find area, you just multiply, right? So let's change these into improper. So let's do that. So 12 1/6 is going to be 73/6. And then 11.5 is going to be 23 over 2. And you don't keep change or flip anything for this because it's not division. And it doesn't appear that anything cross cancels on this one either. All right, so we're just going to do 73 times 23. All right, so 73 times 23 is 1,679. And then 6 times 2, we don't need to find an LCD because they have this. When we're multiplying them, we don't find a common denominator. All right, and then we're just going to divide that. We're going to change it back into a mixed number. So we're going to do 1,679 divided by 12. So 12 divides into 16 once. Subtract and get 4. Bring down to 7. Repeat. 12 divides into 47 almost 4 times, but 48's too big. So we have to go with a 3, which is 36. Subtract, you're left with 11. Bring down the last number that we can bring down. That's 119. All right, and then if it was 120, then it would be 10, but we can do 9 here. We do 9. 9 times 12 is 108. And this comes out to 11 as well. So it's going to be 139 and 11/12 square yards. Anything area is always square units.